AITA, for not wanting anything to do with my uncle and aunt after they treated my mom so badly. My mom, 65F, is a kind person who will do anything she can to help someone who needs it. But her brother, my uncle, and his wife, my aunt, have treated my mom so badly in the past. In the late 90s, things got really bad at home to the point it became violent. Police were called, but they couldn't do anything. Mom talked to my grandmother, who lived with my aunt and uncle, and she advised Mom to stay with my dad. My grandmother was more worried about what people will think. My mom asked my grandmother if it was okay to redirect her post to their house. My grandmother said no. No one in the family wanted to help us. We sought refuge with a lady who looked after my brother and I when we were children. We stayed there for a week, then we moved to a town way out of the city. Far away. My uncle refused to help us move the few belongings we managed to escape with. He didn't want people thinking he agreed with what my mom had done. Shortly after moving away, my grandfather had a stroke, and everyone blamed my mom. Mom took it badly. She carried a lot of guilt for years. My grandmother, uncle and aunt never defended my mom. We found out many years later that wasn't my grandfather's first stroke. He had 2 before and no one bothered telling my mom. They let her believe that my grandfather's stroke was because my mom had left my dad. About 9 years ago, Mom fell out with my aunt, and it got pretty nasty. My aunt kept trying to find reasons to pick a fight with my mom. It was silly little things about who she talks to, why she goes out with certain people, why she spends her money on going on holidays so much. Just got nastier and nastier. Mom would just stop talking because she didn't want to have an argument. They fell out so badly that my uncle took his wife's side instead of hearing out my mom. Whenever my mom would phone the house to speak to my grandmother, my aunt answered. My aunt would hang up when she heard my mom's voice. Mom would have to call back again, and my grandmother would answer the phone. My aunt would say to my mom, "What haven't we done for you?" as if my mom was someone they picked up off the street. When my grandmother fell over and was admitted to hospital, no one bothered calling my mom to let her know. Another relative somehow found out and phoned my mom. My mom asked her brother why he didn't bother letting her know. He said that she broke things off with the family, so why should he tell her? Mom reminded them that she's fallen out with him and his wife, which had nothing to do with their mom. A few years later, my grandmother got really ill and was admitted to hospital. We all didn't live near the hospital, but we went as much as we could. Mom stayed with a relative and went to the hospital every day. Twice a week, I took an extended lunch break and went to visit her at the hospital. It had been a long time since I saw her, and she looked like a fragile old woman compared to the woman who acted like the matriarch of the family. My cousins wouldn't talk to us. We all tried to stay civil. It was so awkward. My brother and I only endured it for our mom. Mom tried to ask the doctor and nurses for updates, but what she was told she wasn't prepared for. My uncle had told the medical team not to tell my mom anything about my grandmother. No updates. No history. No decision-making power. I was furious. I was about to say something to my uncle, but Mom begged me not to. It was his way to maintain power and control. That's what this was. So I didn't say anything. I was civil. My grandmother passed away. Mom was there. My uncle was there. My aunt was there. When my brother and I found out, we went straight to the hospital. I hugged my mom. I hugged my uncle. I hugged my aunt. Before the funeral, my mom asked my uncle if she could stay at their house. Logistically, it was easier for Mom to help with funeral arrangements. My uncle said no. Mom stayed with a relative and went to the house every day. After the funeral, Mom made the odd phone call, but my aunt and uncle really weren't interested in talking. It seemed that now my grandmother had gone, there was no point in keeping in touch. So Mom stopped calling. I had no interest in connecting with anyone from that side of the family. I'm sure they felt the same, so at least we were on the same page. 2 years ago, Mom started talking to me about her brother. She missed him. She wanted to reconcile with them. I told my mom that she's a grown woman, and I'm not going to tell her who she can and cannot talk to. But I made it very clear that I have no interest in reconciling with them. My brother said the same. Mom called her brother. Over the last 2 years, she's been going to their house, staying over, and it's like nothing happened. 2 months ago, my mom got a frantic call from my aunt. My uncle had a heart attack and was in hospital. Mom called me, and I said she needs to go. I told her to make sure she packs her medication and a battery pack for her phone. After conversations with the doctors, my uncle would require triple heart bypass surgery. Mom stayed with my aunt. She cooked and cleaned while she was there, and went to the hospital every day with my aunt to sit with my uncle. There were some days my mom stayed at the house to cook and clean, while my aunt went to the hospital alone. This irked me a bit because it sounded like she was there to tend to the house. Neither of my cousins went round to cook or clean, and they lived closer. It sounded like my mom was doing most of it. My aunt was really nervous about driving to the hospital, and she relied a lot on my mom. Mom kept my brother and I updated. Neither of us really cared, but we didn't express our feelings to Mom. 2 weeks after the surgery, my uncle was supposed to have gone home, but caught an infection and had to stay longer. Mom was on the phone with my aunt, and my aunt let slip that my uncle had had 3 strokes in total. Mom only knew about one of them. In fairness, his medical history is private, and if he didn't want to tell his sister, that's his choice. My brother thought there was something else going on with my uncle that my aunt isn't sharing with my mom. They've always been really secretive about medical stuff, like it's a taboo. I remember when my grandmother was in hospital after having a stroke. My aunt said we shouldn't tell anyone. I looked at my aunt because that was ludicrous. My grandmother's face was drooping on one side. Anyone who looked at her would know she's had a stroke. Update. It's been a year since my uncle passed away. His body couldn't fight the infection he caught in the hospital. Mom was so distraught, and it was hard to console her. When we turned up for the funeral, I did something I didn't mean to do. My aunt saw me and stepped forward to hug me. Out of instinct, I stepped back. I didn't mean to. I knew I would have to hug her. Reluctantly. So I was mentally ready for it. Or so I thought. Clearly my body didn't get the memo. My aunt's eyes widened. Others saw. I looked at my mom, and I recognized that look from my childhood. She was furious with me. For a split second, I thought my aunt was going to make a scene. I was ready for it. But it didn't come. The funeral ended, and I went home. The next day, Mom called me. I asked how she was, and she was making small talk. I could sense in her voice that she was building up to shout at me about what I had done. Then it came. She was seething. How could you do that? That's so rude. Everyone saw. What am I supposed to say to your aunt? I didn't raise you to be like this. I could tell this had been bubbling over the last 24 hours, so I let her get it off her chest. Once she stopped talking, I spoke. I told her we will discuss it when emotions aren't so high. She's just cremated her brother. She wouldn't answer the phone to me for the next 2 weeks. Eventually, she called me and asked me to explain myself. She was still seething. I told her that it wasn't intentional. The only reason I was at the funeral was for her. I didn't care about my aunt and uncle after the way they treated her for years. They spent years using her and treating her like garbage, and she would go running back to them. As if none of it mattered. They caused her so much pain and sorrow for years, and I listened and tried to help her feel better. Then something came out of my mouth that I hadn't anticipated. When I was younger, you always told me to make sure I don't befriend someone who uses me, but it looks like family get a free pass. I couldn't take the words back. Complete silence. I knew she was there, I could hear her breathing. Click. She hung up. I texted my brother to give him a quick rundown of what happened. I was sure she was going to call him. My cousin sent me a message shortly after. Probably to have a go about what happened between me and his mom. I never replied back. I don't know if he was going to start an argument or maybe he wanted to leave the past in the past. I wasn't interested in anything to do with that side of the family. Mom and I are back to normal. Sort of. We don't talk about her side of the family. Mom still comes round to stay during school holidays. I talk to her every day. We've never discussed the conversation we had after my uncle's funeral.